I think from my perspective that the first thing you do is make a decision that you're going to do something, and that's the critical thing. You've got to have your why sorted out before you build, a significant roadmap. Now, for me, the why is I want to return representative democracy to the people. I want the people to have a voice. I don't want our elected members to be ignoring what the people are saying as they are now. So, that's why I'm here, because I believe that we have to snap the system that has developed and bring it back to the people. So that's the fundamental thing. So I think the roadmap can be discovered in, how do you bring the people along when they don't really know what they need or want?
Correct. Yeah.
And how do you bring the people along when some of them are supporting some of these draconian measures out of fear?
Yes, with limited knowledge.
With limited knowledge, but that's, and there's a lot of higher echelon people that think that the Australian people, I've heard it 2 or 3 times this weekend, that there's a lot of higher echelon people that don't believe that the Australian people have the intelligence to unpack what's happening in their country. Well, I think the evidence is quite to the contrary. I've always had a lot of faith in the Australian people. And that evidence is the fact that there are 50 marginal seats. That evidence is they can't form a majority government in this country anymore. That evidence is Craig Kelly polling at 30-odd%. That evidence is reflected in people all over Australia expressing concern and dismay at what's happening. Now, a lot of them might support some of the measures, but they know something is wrong. And I think it's the majority of people know something's wrong. So if I want to build their confidence to vote for us, we need to demonstrate that we're capable of governing.
Yeah.
So that means that we have to select, high calibre, highly talented candidates. I'm talking doctors and lawyers, but also mum and dads who know what it's like to bring up a family in the suburbs, and people that come from all walks of life that can represent people.
Yeah.
And I think if we build a system that enables them, empowers them to represent people properly, then I think the Australian people buy our solution.
I do too. They're hungry for it. They haven't had a viable proposition till now.
No.
And no one's gone after the government and the opposition in the House. And the people's house, not their house, the people's house.
That's what parliament means. Belongs to the people.
And so for us, we have to build a system, we have to build a message, we have to multiple demographics that this is the answer. What concerns me dramatically is that a lot of people under 40 don't know how our system operates.
No, they need
They've
education.
got no idea.
So we've got to transmit communicate those essentials that they've never been given and should be taught in schools.
They purposely did that. They wanted to dumb us
If
down.
we were educated,
exactly
bring it
right.
back into the curriculum. It should be essential.
So one of the things all of our candidates and elected members will do is run a monthly program to educate their electorate about the power of their vote and what democracy in Australia is about and how the parliament works.
Awesome.
And I had a consulting company that ran a program in Sydney Airport prior to the Olympics. I was spending billions of dollars to redevelop the airport, the whole international terminal for the Olympics. But they had very bad morale amongst the staff that worked at the airport.
Yeah.
So our consulting company won a bid to change that, and we called it Customers First, and we implemented it. And really, we had no idea how to change that culture. And we ran all these different training programs for people, for the leadership and everything else. And within about 3 months of starting that program, the big thing that showed up was that people were smiling and saying hi and doing all these things.
Wow.
And we realised, you know what? It didn't really matter what we were educating the people in. they were just connecting, and they were building community, and they were beginning to interact and change their culture and change the dynamics of their setting. And you know, running these training programs in the electorates is a big step to getting people to connect in their communities. You know, every electorate is 80 to 120,000 people, and that's 80 to 120,000 voices that can be used to help govern. So if there's legislation coming through on retail, we'll get all the retailers in to tell you what they think of the legislation and get them to participate in the development of governance in this country.
This is brilliant.
So from my perspective, I think the roadmap is it's a big roadmap, it's a complex roadmap because of the nature of our democracy and the totalitarian way things have gone. But also, it's very simple. We get the people reconnected, and we get the people reconnected to their democracy, and we actually have a system where the elected members have to represent their people, and that they can vote in a way which actually they're empowered to represent the people, not the party.
Look, I know somebody that would be on board with you and throw all their ammunition at you, and he holds a very powerful position within the union movements, and I believe
this maritime union.
Well, the maritime.
I want to meet him.
All right, Kevin Bracken from the former Maritime Secretary of the Maritime Union.
Yeah.
And the other guy is my good friend John Wilson, lives on his boat up in Moreton Island, and I talk with him regularly. He, for 20 years, he was in Federal Parliament, head of the Trades Hall for the not Maritime, that was the other unions, and he's very well connected. Now, he said to me that, I was saying to Drew earlier, he said the problem is that the union movement has become important and is controlling the narrative from inside unions. Now, if you look at the money, the wealth that comes in through unions, it's a bank, you know, that has a lot of weight. Now, we can put a harness around that, right? Things like ME Super, the Maritime Union, that's another topic, and that's where I want to have a talk with you at some stage, if we might, with my friend from the Reserve Bank.
Yeah, we definitely want.
Okay, because we can salvage Australia out of debt, not a problem. Get it back to $1.98 against the US like we were in 1978, and a surplus every year in every state. People have forgotten that. Okay, that was before we were in with the World Bank paying 50 on the SDR system. You know, we're on a parallel system, so we can get the economy back. Right, we've got to get out of the dirty system. So we're going to create a new parallel system. Right, but so. Yeah, you'll get John on board with the unions and the money flow. And the other thing he said is, what he said is we've got to bring down the two. He said the two-party system is what's failed us, and the union is a big problem in that because they run the Labor Party, got the Labor Party shackled, right? And the one that's supplying the money is the one that's steering the horse.
You always got to follow the money trail.
Because you do.
I had a great relationship in Family First with the ACTU President Sharon Burrows and Greg Combate at the time. And I think there's a really, really important place for unions to stand up for Australians.
Absolutely.
Exactly, that's right.
I think that
we can't lose them.
You know, there was a doctor. I'll tell you the story, and I've forgotten his last name. Archie Carabanis, I think it was. He's a doctor to Indigenous children. Wrote a book called Every Second Child, and he told the story of how every second child in the Aboriginal communities was dying from vaccines. Mm-hmm. So he passed away 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Well, that's before this round of bloody.
That's before this.
Poison.
This was a whole thing up in Darwin. Anyway, so he found a way with vitamin C by giving the kids massive doses
The
of
most
vitamin C.
underrated vitamin for the immune system.
They were surviving. And so
So you
his
can go up and pay
reward for saving
individually.
the Aboriginal children was for him to be deregistered by the AMA.
This is what they do.
So the AMA came in and they said, we're going to deregister you. But he got saved. He got saved by the Newcastle Trades and Labour Council, who said to the AMA, and this is what the union movement's got to get back to, said to the AMA, if you deregister that man, we will go on a strike around this country and bring this country to a standstill.
If we can give them something like the message that you were talking about, they will embrace that.
Not all of them will, but
No, but we
most
get the
of
top.
them.
We get the top senior boys who have got a lot of clout, and once the rest of them on the ground, the strength is in the number. The foot soldiers, which is the ones out there doing the work, paying their money, paying their super, and all that. Right? Once they know about, once they receive your message, once the message is clear and
I think you're absolutely right. If we can persuade the union
The
that,
unions are very powerful.
that the workers have been badly misled. My first email to BDF, I got the FOI done on 28th of February last year.
you're a gun. What you produce
Was very clear.
right?
It was very clear.
Amazing.
It said that, look, based on my analysis
hard.
of the situation, anybody below the age of 20 must be allowed to continue without any precautions. The data are very clear. There's no difference in terms of the pandemic to them. They can just continue normally. For those below the age of 40, they need to take some minor precautions, sanitizers or whatever. Between 40 and 60, they need to start taking some more serious precautions. After 60, they should start working from home. The surprising thing is that the Great Barrington Declaration by Martin Kulldorff, who is actually really appreciative of my work from the very beginning when I was writing articles, he actually basically more or less said the same thing, that above 60, people should be given 2 to 3 months of work from home requirements. And so effectively what we said, now imagine the workers here, for example, hospitality, the ones who suffered the most. What is their age? They're all below 40. What should have been done? Just sanitize your hands. That's it. And masking is very dangerous. Don't do masking. Right? So
Absolutely.
here's the thing. The common sense things that the unions have been misled about, that they can easily verify. We have the Great Barrington Declaration. This is a professor of the Harvard Medical School and professor of the Stanford University and the professor of the Oxford University. These are the topmost professors in the world saying that it had to be based on the risk. The unions have been misled by their Labour government, by the Andrews government, etc., who are misguided by, obviously by China influence. I mean, they've been influenced by China more than anything else.
He's taking his data from a computer that's running out of Melbourne Uni.
I think the uni, by the way, is too big a deal because there are thousands of people there. We don't know who's good and who's bad. But all I say is that the Dan Andrews being the single person responsible in Victoria, he has been misled, or he's directly misleading people.
I think he's under instructions.
Under whatever instructions. So now the unions who are
100%.
supporting Dan Andrews have made the biggest, most harmful decision for their own workers, own members.
Unbelievable.
Right? And so imagine somebody who's, how much more risk you've created. For example, I was works at Victoria for 5 years, and it's very critical for apprentices to go through a systematic learning process for dealing with high risk machines. If you get them out of work effectively for 6 months,
And then they come back in cold.
and they come back and they harm themselves,
Yes.
like consider the very high duty machines in the the butchers, what they call the
The bandsaws.
and
the
so
pincers.
you're basically chopping meat, etc. Knives, very dangerous. So
Absolutely.
the kind of training you need, workers like children, they forget after 6 months what they
I was
learn.
only talking about this today with motorcyclists, actually. Weekend warriors that and they go and kill themselves because I used to like to ride every day. I didn't ride every day.
Yeah.
I don't have to stop for 2 weeks and I go, oh, I've lost my edge.
Yeah, there's a kind of a
You know?
balance of the motorcycle, right?
Yeah.
So there's the responsiveness. You need practice. There's a lot of stuff that we've forced our children and young youth to forget.
Yes.
And some of them would have been harmed as a result, right? And some of them will be lifelong setbacks.
Yeah.
So why did the unions not apply their mind? To me, this has been a very strange phenomenon because they're the ones representing these young people who are workers, and whatever they've done, they've harmed them most. And just listen blindly to Dan Andrews on the ground of a.
He's got way too much power.
And there's just a reminder of our totalitarian regime in Perth. So, for whatever reason, you've got to wear masks outside again. And this is just.
Yeah, we were the first ones to.
Did you see the clip of he was a Melbourne-based medical medic guy, had a little CO2 measurer, a little stick, and he said, look, here's a natural atmosphere, runs around 465 parts per billion or million or whatever, CO2. And he puts it in there while he's breathing, it goes up to 7,900.
Yeah, easily.
Right? Well, you know, I mean, you don't have to be Einstein, okay? What does someone need to do to commit suicide? Just breathe enough CO2.
Yeah,
What does
absolutely.
your immune system and your white do? Produce white blood cells, and what do they need? Oxygen. Okay? What happens when we're deprived of oxygen? We deplete it in white blood cells. So what happens? Your immune system suffers. Okay?
Judy Weileman says without a mask you get 24 or 27 parts of oxygen, and with the mask you get 17.
Well, that's
That just confirms what you're saying.
Yeah. Now, what about the professor, the medical guy out at Monash University, who had 60 out of 60 successful, complete wipeouts of all the COVID strains of the virus with ivermectin? Now, ivermectin I've done a lot of research on prior to this because I use it for cancer treatment. Okay? It's been curing cancers on animals ever since, veterinary vets and farmers.
It was, I think, discovered 20 years ago, got a Nobel Prize, this medicine. It's one of the most miraculous drugs.
It was discovered in Japan in 1971, and the bacteria is called ivermectin. Okay? Now, as a hunter and gatherer, you consumed a certain amount of these, got an inoculum of ivermectin bacteria when you're eating the roots of yam daisies and all sorts of things. You consume these things, which keeps your immune system up, right? The blackfellas never got cancer, right? Until we arrived. And now, you can get it in two products. I never make it public on the second one, because I know what the AMA do, right? So the main one is ivermectin. It's got too many other bits and pieces in it that I don't like. I take Verbamec. When you look at the warnings on it, it says do not smell it, do not touch it. If you smell it, sit down for half an hour and monitor the person. I drink it, right? And everyone that's cured cancer drank it, right? You put it in your lambs, your horses and your cattle, and then you eat the meat, right? So they put the fear of God into you on one of the leading...
Is that it? Verbamec?
Verbamec, okay?
Mec.
Yes. So all it is the ivermectin bacteria in solution with a little bit of selenium. Okay? So you weigh yourself, you take a milligram per 4 kilograms body mass. It doesn't make you feel sick or anything. You just start to, if you're heavily infested, what it does is it kills parasites. 3 medical professionals over the history of time have written books about it, which started with Rife. He concluded through the best microscopes in the day that cancer was connected to a parasite and a fungal environment with pathogenic bacteria. Then many years later, Elaine Hollingsworth took up the same research to confirm his work, and then more recently it was Alan Cantwell to confirm the work. So cancer requires something that disrupts the cells that creates the mutation. Okay? Ivermectin destroys the tumour and restores the health back to the cell. Okay? Now, here in Australia, he announced it on mainstream media, right? Not a response, no one contacted him. Okay? 6 months later, he was re-interviewed again by, what's his name, Alan Jones. And he said, now, has anybody from the government, did Daniel Andrews or anybody contact you? And he said, no. He said, why not? I said, I don't know. You can't tell me they didn't hear about it. Well, guess what? I came across something the other day that's being sold in India. And it's a treatment for COVID. And it is ivermectin, zinc tablets, which is what Trump was pushing, with the hydroxychloroquine, right, which is a preventer. And he said, you won't get it. Now, it sells for $2 in India, and it's being supplied from Australia.
Yeah, it's supposed to supply from
right?
here.
Well, why don't we just take it? Get back to normal.
Yeah, so what I think the union issue that you raised was there are so many things that went wrong in the pandemic. And of course, the whole thing boils down to the fact that the party system has failed us. Yeah. And so the laborers, the unions are part of the labor, and the unions have failed to actually hold the Labour Party to account. So, would somebody in the union movement want to start thinking for once, ask questions? So yeah, it'll be good to contact them because we have to attack this from all angles. Remember the other one that Australia's representative is got very strong roots in liberty, but also very strong roots. I have written a book on this issue and I strongly promote unions. I believe unions have a significant role to play in a capitalist society. Okay. However, there are very significant problems as well that the unions have created, particularly teachers' unions and in some cases the construction unions. What we need is unions to be under some kind of a balanced management. That means they need to take responsibility for their actions, that they do not go beyond. See, anything that's disproportionate, very simple, is bad. When you do the right thing, it's just the right level. So here what's happened when the unions go beyond their scope, they actually harm their own people, the members, they also harm society. So I think that's the kind of approach we have. So this Australia's representative is actually a place for the union movement as well. Good unions should join this because to me, it's the kind of centrist party that looks after everybody, makes sure that the capitalist system doesn't go overboard. Remember, I'm always talking balance, right?
Yes.
Because there's some excesses. And so who's going to check it? The union movement will check it. Also, competition will check it. So we will in favor of great amount of competition. So this kind of approach means we will eviscerate and completely blank out the Labour Party and the Liberal Party both, because we take the core values that they stand for and we bring them into this umbrella party that will serve the people far better because we also allow a lot of debate. Right?
This is perfect. This is what I endeavoured to try to get started years ago when I called that meeting in Sydney. But one of the members of the Australia Party, who I'd been having lengthy conversations with, who seemed wonderful, suddenly stopped taking my calls and wouldn't get back to me
Is
about
that Australia One Party?
it was the Bob Caddo's Australia Party.
Oh, yes.
It was one of the representatives from Sydney. Anyway.
Rod Cullen's party?
No.
Bob Caddo?
Bob Caddo.
Canada's got a party.
He's called Australia Party also.
Now he speaks very good about getting we've got to work with the black fellas to get them out of there, something, and that's to do with something else. But this guy wouldn't confirm with me that he was coming to the meeting, and then he turned up out of the blue, and I got very annoyed with him because he didn't show me the courtesy that he was coming, and then he turned up and he sat his phone down there. And I didn't know the whole time he was recording, and then he was having a private conversation with the guy across the other side of the table about security, and then it turns out he runs a security firm and he's involved with ASIO. And so here he was, as far as I know, infiltrating our whole friggin' bloody meeting. Just like the meeting that I was told you about the other day over the phone that I had on Sunday night, and the key points that I mentioned came out in an emergency damage control public propaganda campaign on 3RRR. Exactly what I was talking about with Motti, which was our key that we could have utilised to bring into this, which is you bring the Ecclesia on board, man. We've got it stitched up. How
Right.
the Ecclesia?
I'm going to have to draw a line today because my time is up.
Go for it.
It's 10:20.
You've been going since very early.